He was dragged by a gigantic crocodile, but the way he survived and escaped remains a mystery to this day and shocks those who hear it. And I know this because that guy is me. And look, I'm here now to tell you what hardly anyone believes when they hear it for the first time. Because no matter how many times I repeat this story, there's always someone with that no way look on their face. But it happened, and it was real as hell. I felt every second of it in my skin, in my bones, in my lungs begging for air. I felt the taste of death so close I could almost touch it. This really happened. It wasn't an urban legend, it wasn't a fisherman's exaggeration, and it was definitely not a made-up story for likes. The truth is, that day I left a piece of my soul in those muddy waters, and even though I escaped, I was never the same again. It all started with a simple routine. You know, when you're in a place you already know that seems harmless, even a bit too familiar. That was it. I was calm doing a job I'd done hundreds of times before. But the mistake was that. Underestimating. Thinking that wild environment respected my presence just because I was there every day. I didn't see it coming. No time to run, no time to scream, just a snap and impact, and boom, the water swallowed me along with it. A huge crocodile like the kind you only see in documentaries, but right there, inches from my face. And I was in its mouth, literally. And when I say it dragged me, I don't mean it figuratively. I was pulled so hard I felt my knee twist the world spinning with my body like I had become a top in the hands of a creature with zero intention of letting me go. It spun me underwater in a whirlpool of pain, desperation, and breathlessness. Meanwhile, my mind was racing, trying to find a way out, trying to remember anything, any tiny chance of survival. I thought of my parents, my friends, the promises I hadn't fulfilled, and I swear I thought, this is where it ends. But it didn't. And that's when things get weird. Because what happened next, even I can't fully explain. I made a move. I'd never tested something that seemed to come from an instinct buried deep inside, like something I didn't even know I knew. A desperate, unthinking gesture that flipped a switch in that moment. And then, it let go. Out of nowhere. Just let go. And disappeared. And I was left there floating alive, bleeding, breathing like I'd been born again. Since that day, every time someone asks how I got out of that situation, I respond with silence. Because some things can't be explained in 2 sentences. Some things need to be felt to be understood. And what I felt that day is what I'm going to tell you now. But the truth is that to this day, no one fully believes what I did. And if you want to know why, if you want to understand what saved me, even if it makes no sense at all, then stick with me to the end. Because maybe, just maybe, you'll also ask yourself, how does someone survive that? And stay standing. Hey, real quick, before anything. If you like true stories that give you chills and leave you breathless, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That helps a lot and gives me the strength to keep bringing you these unbelievable accounts. Thanks from the heart for being here and listening to what I have to say. Seriously, it means a lot to me. Now sit down, focus. Because I'm going to explain how that unforgettable moment happened. My name is Kyle Thompson, and if you'd met me a few years ago, you'd have said I was just another regular guy living life on autopilot. I wasn't the kind to stand out anywhere, not the loudest in the group, not the quietest either. Just that guy in the middle, you know, always around, always. Willing to help, but no one really paying much attention. And you know what? I was fine with that. I never chased the spotlight. My peace always came from simplicity. And in my case, that simplicity had a name: the smell of wet grass, the sound of croaking frogs, and the humid heat on the skin Everglades. I was born and raised in Florida in a little town called Naples, right at the edge of the swamps. My old man was a sport fisherman, the kind who knows every twist in the river like the back of his hand. I grew up listening to him tell stories about giant fish that got away at the last-second storms, that nearly flipped the boat encounters with animals that seemed straight out of a movie. And every time he spoke, my eyes lit up. That was our world. And even after he was gone, when I was still a kid, about 15, I kept going into the wild alone with his rod in one hand and the cooler in the other, like he was still right there beside me. Over time, I really got into it. I got a degree in biology, but I never worked in a lab. That wasn't my thing. I wanted to be out there in the wild, in the river, in the hot silence of the mangroves. So I set up my own ecotourism operation, taking people fishing, camping, exploring the local wildlife. It was hard work, but it gave me a freedom few people have. I could pick my schedule, my clients, and when I needed to disappear for a while, I just dove into the more secluded channels of the Everglades where no one could find me unless I wanted them to. That's where I truly breathed. Now let me explain a bit about the place so you understand what kind of environment we're dealing with. The Everglades aren't just any swamp. That place is almost a living organism. It's hot. It's humid. It's silent and noisy at the same time. During the day, the sun feels like it's melting your skin, and at night the sounds of the dense forest make your head spin if you're not used to it. There are snakes, panthers, mosquitoes the size of helicopters, and of course them, the kings of it all, the crocodiles. And that's not an exaggeration. Those beasts rule there. They're fast, silent, and fear nothing. We learn early to keep our distance, not to mess around, because one mistake, and that's it. Game over. At the time everything happened, I was in my early 30s, already well used to the routine. I mostly worked alone, sometimes hiring a helper during high season. But usually it was just me and my little motorboat, that annoying engine cutting through the silence and water slapping against the sides. I'd wake up early, black coffee backpack on, sun rising on the horizon, and I'd already be navigating channels that looked like they were from another planet. Sometimes a client would show up who wouldn't shut up, wanted selfies with alligators, wanted to touch snakes, but I always found a way to keep things safe. The problem is sometimes we start trusting our own control too much, our own experience. And that's exactly where I screwed up. That particular day I was scouting a new fishing spot. We always need to vary locations to surprise clients. You know, and I'd heard about a more remote area, a river branch that hardly anyone used anymore because it was hard to access. The vegetation there was thicker, the riverbed was muddy, and the air more stifling than usual, like it just stopped moving there. But it had fish. And where there's fish, there are clients. So I went. Alone, like almost always. I brought my basic gear, food, water, GPS, and went slowly, enjoying the morning. Something felt off that day. I can't explain. The silence felt denser. The wind barely moved the trees, and I had that weird sensation you sometimes get, like someone's watching you. But there was no one. Just me, the forest, and that brown, lazy river. I kept navigating until I reached the marked spot. It was a small cove hidden among twisted roots of ancient trees and dark sludge, the kind where if you step in you sink to your knee and feel your foot get sucked in. Docking there was tricky, but I managed to wedge the boat between two fallen trunks and stepped out slowly, testing the ground. The place was eerie but promising, the kind of place no one goes to, and that's exactly why fish love it. I set up my rod, cast the line, and stayed there listening to the forest sounds. It was a strange peace, almost uncomfortable. Now and then, I saw movement in the water, something big passing underneath, but nothing that really worried me. Until out of nowhere, everything went quiet. Complete silence. And if there's one thing people who work in the wild learn, it's this: when the sound disappears, something's wrong. And I felt it. In my gut, in my skin, in my heart, slowly speeding up. Something was off, but I stayed. Stubbornness, maybe. Pride, definitely. We sometimes think we've seen it all, handled the worst, and then nature comes and shows us we don't know anything. It was there in that forgotten stretch of river that my life turned upside down. That's where it all began. I still had the line in the water when I heard that sound. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, a kind of shift only someone used to the wild notices. You know when nature goes silent and all you hear is your own blood rushing through your veins. That was it. My body knew before my mind. Instinct screamed before thought could follow. The kind of thing you don't learn in school but are born with and strengthened by each day, lived in the wild. I stood up slowly, trying to understand what was coming, and that's when everything went dark. The attack was sudden, brutal, direct. I didn't even see where it came from. I just felt the blow. An absurd force slammed into my leg and pulled me straight into the water. I was dragged under without even time to scream. The water swallowed me like I was a stone, and all I could see were blurs of light, sludge, and bubbles. It It was like falling into an underwater abyss. And in the middle of that chaos, I realized it was a crocodile, but not just any. It was massive. I had never seen one that size. It had me by the leg, its teeth like concrete razors, dragging me with a strength that felt otherworldly. I tried hitting, pushing, kicking, but it was like fighting a tractor. It spun its body, and I spun with it like a dry leaf in a current. I was already running out of air, and real panic was setting in. It wasn't just fear, it was absolute terror at realizing I had zero control, that it could all end right then and there. I felt the pressure of the water bursting my eardrums, the metallic taste of blood mixing with the sludge, and my body begging for oxygen. That's when the real pain hit. Not from the bite, that was already surreal, but from muscles, tearing skin giving way, bone cracking. And that's when I understood it wasn't just dragging me. It was trying to drown me before devouring me. But instead of panicking completely, something inside me clicked. I can't really explain it. It was like time slowed down, like panic, made room for a bizarre clarity, like when your body goes into survival mode and the world around you disappears. I remembered a documentary I saw years ago, one random night flipping through TV without paying much attention. The host mentioned a crocodile attack and said the eyes are the animal's most sensitive spot, that if someone had even the slightest chance to reach the eyes, they might escape. At the time, it seemed like the dumbest idea in the world. But down there in that filthy river with life slipping through my fingers, it was all I had. So I went for it. With the other free leg, I pushed off the bottom and turned myself around. It was dark, but I saw the glint, the eyes, two greenish blurry spots. They were right there, inches from me. I pulled my arm with all my strength, even feeling my shoulder nearly pop out of place, and jammed my fingers into them, acting on pure instinct. It wasn't strength, it was desperation. I pressed on its eyes with everything I had, and the thing thrashed so hard it nearly tore me in half. Its tail sliced through the water and slammed into my hip, but I kept pressing, screaming underwater, soundless. And then it let go. It was like the universe exhaled. Its jaws opened and I was flung backward, floating awkwardly in the middle of nowhere, trying to understand what had just happened. The pain came after. First the sunlight hitting my eyes, then the air exploding into my lungs, followed by the most primal scream I've ever released. I managed to reach the surface, coughing up water, blood, and sludge. I grabbed a floating log and just stayed there for a few seconds that felt like hours. The crocodile had vanished, disappeared into the depths, as if it had never been there. The scene around me looked the same, but inside me, everything was different. My arms trembled, my whole body throbbed. Blood poured from my leg, and I didn't even know if I could move it anymore. But I was alive, and that alone was a miracle. I tried swimming to the boat, but it had drifted. The gentle, almost unnoticeable current had pulled me deeper into the cove. The pain in my ribs told me something might be broken, but the biggest fear was that it might come back. I knew that creature could be anywhere nearby, just waiting. So I gathered the little strength I had, grabbed a root, and started dragging myself along the shore, every movement pure torture. The forest looked darker, denser. Every noise made me freeze. Any ripple in the water made me hold my breath, but I kept going, slowly dragging my body, clutching my wounded leg, eyes scanning everything like radar, until I saw the boat, wedged between two trees, gently rocking. It was the only chance. I threw myself into the water again, swimming with my good arm kicking like mad. When I grabbed the side of the boat and managed to climb in, I collapsed to the floor, shaking spent. I lay there for minutes, staring at the sky, trying to believe I had made it, that I was really there, whole breathing. But even in that moment, something didn't add up. I knew I had pressed on the animal's eyes, knew that's what made it let go. But the way it disappeared, how it vanished so quickly without trying again, that stuck in my head. That wasn't normal crocodile behavior. They don't give up that easily, and that doubt stayed with me for days, weeks. Something about that reaction left me uneasy, like I had touched something beyond the physical. Like for a moment it felt fear too. And it's exactly that strange sensation, that unexpected reaction from the creature, that sets the stage for what comes next. Because escaping was just the Beginning. I lay there at the bottom of the boat for a long time, trying to figure out where I was and what parts of my body still worked. Every breath felt like pulling fire into my lungs, and the pain in my leg was almost unbearable. But still, I couldn't stop smiling. It was a dumb smile, almost nervous, you know. The kind of laugh that isn't funny at all, but comes out because your body doesn't know what to do with so much relief. I was alive. That's it. Alive. And that simple, obvious realization felt like a miracle after what had just happened. Getting up and starting the engine was another battle. I dragged myself across the boat like my legs were made of cloth, using every muscle I had to reach the edge and push my body up. I balanced myself as best I could and managed to start the engine, which sputtered a few times before kicking in. That metallic noise cutting through the silence of the forest had never sounded so beautiful. It was all I needed in that moment. I knew I had to get out of there fast before it, or anything else, came back to finish what it started. Steering. That boat through the pain was like navigating a nightmare, but I did it. Reaching the dock was a mix of relief and embarrassment. I was a wreck, bleeding dirty, stinking of sludge, and with a deep gash in my leg that looked like a shark bite. There were 2 guys unloading fishing gear nearby, and when they saw me, they ran over immediately. They yelled for help, called emergency services, tried to keep me awake until the ambulance arrived. And while they talked, asked questions, tried to understand what had happened, all I could say was, "It let me go. It let me go." And no one understood what that meant, but to me, it meant everything. I spent 4 days in the hospital, got 27 stitches in my leg, lost a lot of blood, fractured 2 ribs, tore a ligament, and even got an infection from the contaminated water. The doctors said if I had taken another half hour to get there, I might have lost the leg, or even my life. My body ended up patched up and my mind even more scrambled. But the body heals, you learn that. The hard part was processing what had happened inside my head. For weeks I relived that moment underwater 1,000 times. I tried to make sense of it all. Why did it attack me? Why did it let go? Why me? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized there might not be a right answer. Maybe I was asking the wrong question. The point wasn't to understand the crocodile. It was to understand what it did to me. Because the truth is, something inside me changed forever that day. After I recovered, I went back to the wild. Not out of duty, but out of necessity. I had to face that place again. I had to step on that ground, feel that humid heat, hear those sounds. But now with different eyes. I tried to return to the attack spot, but I never found the exact location. Again. The landscape had changed. The water level was different. The trees looked unfamiliar. It was as if the swamp had swallowed that memory along with everything left from that day. And you know what I think that was for the best. Since then, I've kept working in tourism, but in a quieter way. I only take small groups, avoid risky areas, and always keep a radio close by. My body has scars I'll carry for the rest of my life, but none are as deep as the one left in my mind. The trauma became part of my story, but it doesn't define me. And the fear I felt turned into respect, because now I truly understand that nature is not a theme park. It's not there to entertain or to be challenged. It just is, simply, and we're just one tiny detail within it. But you know what left the deepest mark? That strange feeling in the pit of my soul, that it hesitated. That won't leave my mind. In that instant, when my fingers touched its eyes and I felt the strength leave its jaws, I swear it wasn't just pain it felt. It was fear. It was surprise. As if it hadn't expected that. As if for a moment it too realized that in that very second its life could end as well. And that exchange changes everything. Because it made me understand that instinct isn't just ours. Even monsters have a limit. Today when I tell this story, and yes, I tell it even knowing many won't believe, I talk not just about the attack, but about the reaction. About what that moment taught me. And the biggest lesson was, this life is way too fragile for us to play at being invincible. We get so used to thinking we're in control, we forget how quickly everything can change in a snap. And sometimes it's in that snap that we finally wake up. Sometimes it's only in that space between breathing and drowning that we truly understand what matters. So that's it. I'm not a hero. I'm not brave. I'm not a role model. I was just a guy in the wrong place at the wrong time who made the only move he could make. I survived, I learned, I changed. And every time I look in the mirror and see the scars, I remember. Not with anger, not with pain, but with a strange kind of gratitude. Because that day I stared death in the face, and it let me go. Now tell me something. What about you? What would you do if your head was inches from a crocodile's teeth? Would you freeze, would you fight, or would you accept the end? Let me know in the comments what you felt hearing this story. If you've ever been through something similar, or if you know someone who has. And if this story kept you hooked until now, if it made you think, feel, reflect, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Victims of Nature channel. That really helps me keep telling stories like this that show that deep down we're all vulnerable. And that's what makes us human. Oh, and before anyone tries to repeat this madness, let me make one thing very clear: this story is fictional. It was created to entertain, move, and make you reflect, but it should not be taken as an example of how to behave in real-life situations. In real life, never ever risk yourself in wild environments without preparation, without support, and without knowing what you're doing. And even less should you try to confront a wild animal. This is fiction. But the lesson, that one is very real.